Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Transfer Talk show on Football Talk Podcast. My name is Ozzy, and I'm your host for this evening. A lot of rumors circulating online regarding Liverpool. It looks like Liverpool are the only team that are working in the background. It also shows that Richard Hughes is finally doing some work as well. So let's see how many deals he can wrap up in the next few weeks and months. So what we'll do today, we'll go through some of the latest rumors that have take place in like the last 5 or so days. So let's start with the first one, and of course, this is one that is pretty much ongoing and has been for the past a week and a half, and that is Florian Wirtz. And the latest sort of rumor that we're hearing is that Man City have pretty much said they're no longer interested in signing the player for whatever reason, which puts Liverpool in, of course, in a good stance because if there was a move where he had to choose between a Premier League team, it may have been Man City just because they pursued the player for quite some time. But at the minute, it looks like the front runners are Liverpool and also Bayern Munich. Um, if you're looking at it from a Bayern Munich point of view, it's not looking good. There's been a lot of rumors circulating that the family of Florian Wirtz, because his parents, I believe, they manage his sort of contracts and daily, routine in regards to the football affairs. Um, I'm not pleased with the sort of tactics and strategies that they've tried to deploy in swaying Florian Wirtz to join Bayern Munich, and it's the same kind of methods that Real Madrid use in Spain, and I'm sure other teams in world football do the same as well. So the parents aren't too pleased in terms of how Bayern Munich have gone about, trying to sign Florian Wirtz. And at the minute, it looks like Liverpool are showing strong interest in signing the player. There was a rumor circling yesterday that Michael Edges has flown over to Boston to have discussions with FSG in regards to possibly finding out if we can make this move a reality, find out if the finances are there to complete this move. Now look, this is all just rumors and hearsay. My gut feeling, as the days go on, I do feel like it could be a move that becomes a reality. Um, we've shown a lot of interest in the player. From what I've heard as well, Arne Slot's already had a chat with the player and has showcased sort of future plans in terms of how he sees Florian Wirtz fitting into the way we play and what his role will be within the team. So at the minute, it looks like he's been impressed with what Arne Slot has presented to him or has spoken to him about. Um, but look, only time will tell. If Liverpool were to get this deal over the line, this has to be regarded as a marquee signing. For me, Florian Wirtz is one of the best number 10s in world football. There aren't many around, to be fair, but he has phenomenal ability on the ball, great dribbler. He gives me Coutinho vibes in the way he plays, and it's going to be interesting to see where he fits in the team. If he joins, because I think he predominantly plays as a number 10 for Bayer Leverkusen, but I have seen him play on the left, and I've also seen him play on the right for his club as well. So in this Liverpool team, I think he will probably play on the left-hand side and be more of an inside forward. But of course, depending on who we're facing and depending how we want to set up tactically, he can easily go back to playing his natural number 10 role. Some have also said maybe a false nine role, which you can't completely rule out. I do feel like he has the ability to do that, but I feel like his best sort of skill sets match with playing in a deeper role rather than playing further up and then dropping deep. I feel like playing with the final third in front of him is what makes him excel in terms of threading the final through ball and shooting from distance. Got a great shot on him as well. So I've been watching a few compilations and it's exciting me even further. So let's see what happens. But I have a good feeling that we will get this one over the line. You know, if this was the first sort of marquee signing we make, it will definitely help us understand what other targets there are within the team because we're going to have to spend big on Florian Wirtz. I think the fee is around 100 odd million. I saw an article saying he has a release clause, which I'm not entirely sure about. The release clause that was quoted was 110 million. So I'm not entirely sure if that is true. I'll have to do a bit more research on that. But he will cost, an arm and a leg. But, there are players in world football that I feel like are difficult to attain because, of course, players that we're trying to sign, like the Isaks and the Alvarez, it's going to be very hard to get them away. So maybe we found another solution in Florian Wirtz where he might not be a traditional number 9, but he's more than capable of playing in a central position, scoring goals, and also being a creative spark for the team. So it could be a win-win situation. So this is one I'm very, very excited about. And also it helps that, he's got a teammate in Bayer Leverkusen that is also joining Liverpool, which is of course is Jeremie Frimpong, which we can talk about now as well. So the current, I won't say rumor, but the noise right now we're hearing is that he's had his medical and he's also passed the medical. So it's only a matter of time that it gets made, and or shall I say gets officially announced to the world. Now, of course, we've still got one remaining fixture this Sunday. It would be quite funny if they were to make the official announcement before the game, especially when you've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, playing his last game for Liverpool at Anfield, for him to understand that, he's already been replaced, and even Conor Bradley has signed a new contract. It will probably hurt him a little bit. I'm sure you guys have seen a video from the game against Brighton where the fans were celebrating and Trent was looking at the crowd, turns around and he just looks a bit gutted. And maybe, it came to realization for him that he may have made a mistake because this is what he's leaving behind. When he goes to Real Madrid, it's not going to be that kind of fan base. I'm not saying they don't have a noisy or a low fan base, but it's not the same. Um, Especially when it's your home club and the support and the fans are from where you're from as well. There's a different connection. So he'll probably won't be one, to regret that in the future, but that's not our problem anymore. That's for him to to figure out in the end. But for me, Jeremy Frimpong, I'm very pleased and excited about this signing. Um, I did have reservations when I spoke about him a few weeks ago about sort of his defensive duties, but I feel like, he's not going to play as a traditional right back, just like Trent Alexander-Arnold didn't play that way either. So we're going to facilitate him in the team and use his strengths to our advantage because that's going to be key in terms of how the team sets up. So for me, that's going to be very, very important in terms of how we play, and it's exciting because we don't really have a team that are blessed with rapid speed, and he's going to provide us with so much pace down that flank, and I feel like it's going to add a different dimension to the way we play. It's also going to allow Mohamed Salah to go a bit more inside and focus, on scoring and uh, providing assists from more central position because Frimpong will occupy that right hand side and control it on his own. So look, I'm very pleased about this signing. £30 million. Come on now, that's peanuts in this day and age. So for me, great bit of business, homegrown, so it ticks a lot of boxes there. So yeah, that's one to look forward to. He's actually even made a request to get involved in the parade on Monday. I don't think the club have accepted that offer. I don't think that's right. But looking forward to him joining for pre-season, and yeah, hopefully he'll hit the ground running, and hopefully he'll be joined by his mate Florian Wirtz as well. So yeah, exciting stuff for us. And that's one fullback that we've signed. There's another fullback that we've been linked with, and that is Milos Kerkez. Not huge surprise because it's a name that's been circulating for a number of months. But the current rumor is that Liverpool are in advanced talks with Milos Kerkez and Bournemouth. The only sort of snagging moment at the minute is the fee. So the club haven't completely agreed on the fee. It's not like a huge gap or anything like that. I think it's probably just the payment structure. So what I've heard so far is that we could be paying sort of 40 million plus 5 million add-ons. So it calculates to a 45 million pound deal. And some fans will say that's a lot of money for a left back. For me, it's the market rate. You're signing someone who's 21 years of age, very, very young. And for me, has levels to achieve and has a very high ceiling. And he's hopefully going to be our left back for years to come, just like Robertson has for us as well. So for me, he's like a young Robbo in terms of the traits that he has. So I'm excited about this signing. Having Gyokeres and Frimpong, that's fear factor, to our oppositions, and they're just the fullback. So imagine if you add Wirtz and if you add another number 9, and if you add a solid central midfielder as well, fair factors all around. So for me, that's going to be key in terms of how we set up. We can't just be, predictable in our tactical approach. We've got to be different. We've got to elevate our game and elevate our strategy next season, because teams will try to, figure us out. I remember watching an interview of Salah quite recently where he said that teams have already figured out into the how he plays. So it's something where maybe they'll need to deploy a different tactic, in order for him to get the best out of himself, and then of course help in terms of the team's output going forward as well. So for me, Milos Kerkez, 45 million. I'm not mad at that. I think it's a decent fee. Yes, you're probably thinking left back, that's too expensive, but we're in this kind of market where you're gonna have to pay a little bit over the odds. And remember, I think they signed him for like 20 odd million as well. So, we weren't going to get him for 30 million. It was going to be where, we had to pay a little bit more. And he's had a fantastic season. Probably one of the best left backs, I would say, in the league this season. I know he's only had 5 assists to his name, but it's not just about, those kind of stats. You've got to see how he plays. He's been pivotal in terms of how Bournemouth set up, very attacking on that left hand side. Uh, Good defensively as well, in my opinion. So look, this will be an exciting sign. This one, I think, maybe we'll hear some concrete news next week at some point after the parade. So, we might have wrapped up 2 fullbacks, and we're still in May right now. So season's not even wrapped up, and we're treating our remaining fixtures as preseason games, and we're signing players with real purpose as well. So good to see. Now, one part, good to see that we're pursuing a lot of players, but we also have to talk about players that could potentially leave, and that is Luis Diaz. Now, the current rumors that Barcelona, no surprise, surprise, are still very much interested in signing the left winger, and apparently they are willing to pay 80 million euros, which I believe is around 65 million. So I'm just going to double check that. Um, just to give you an accurate number. So 67.5 million pounds would be that price. Now, is that an offer that Liverpool should accept? For someone that's, I think, 29 years old, it's not a bad deal, if I'm being brutally honest with you. Um, I'd probably want a bit more. That's me just being a bit greedy there. But if that was the offer, I think it's probably worth looking into, because it all comes down to the player. If he's willing to continue to play on his current terms, then that's fine. Or if Liverpool are willing to offer him improved terms, then it shows that we really value the player. But if the club aren't willing to improve his terms, and you know don't want to make any movement in regards to changing their mind about a new contract, then the best thing to do is part ways with the player, because I think turned 29, was turning 29 this year, and he's at an age where he could be hitting into his prime years as well. But I feel like Liverpool will have that. I think fans will more than probably the club, but we don't want to have that PTSD where players on their last year of their contract, and then they leave on a free. He's still got 2 years, so in my mind, I always thought if Diaz doesn't move this year, I can see him playing for us for another season and then maybe leave next year. I think that would be a good sort of move for Diaz to play for one more year, and then we've got young player in Rio and Gamora. This season I think is going to be a time where he really establishes himself in the under 21s, and then I would say in summer 2026 or next year, I think that's when we'll see him heavily involved in the first team. So maybe that would be time for that transition for Diaz to go, and then Rio Ngomora comes into the Liverpool squad, trying to be Mystic Oz here and try and predict the future here. But you know bit far fetched, but look, I feel like we do have to think about the future, and I feel like if Luis Diaz was to leave, there are plenty of wingers out there that I feel like could do a job and help Liverpool going forward. So this is going to be interesting. And also, let's not forget, Saudi is showing a lot of interest in signing the player as well. So if they wanted to, really, make a statement and sign Luis Diaz, they'll have to, step up with a bigger bid. And I'm sure they'd be willing to spend 70, 75, 80 million pounds to sign the player. So if you were to ask my sort of prediction on the player, I have a feeling he might leave just because there's so much noise from Barcelona. It never seems to quieten down. I feel like there's no smoke without fire. So there could be some sort of talks behind the scenes that, Diaz is going to leave. And I feel like Liverpool haven't really shown any positive stance in giving him a new contract either. So let's see how it goes. But if Luis Diaz does leave, drop a comment, let me know who you guys would like to see as his replacement in the squad. Another player that we've been linked with is Rayan Cherki. Now, he recently announced last week that he will be leaving Lyon this season. He was quite emotional in his last game for the club. And we've also just found out that he's actually got released because I thought it was around £25 million, but uh, it's actually in euros, and that ends up being around £19 million, which, my God, is absolute dirt cheap in this day and age. Um, for me, I would love Liverpool to be all over that, but it looks like we're heavily focused on signing Wirtz, and maybe Turkey is regarded as a plan B. Call me selfish or call me greedy, but why can't we get both players? Because Ryan Cherki can play in that number 10 role, or he can play on the right wing. And I wouldn't mind seeing Wirtz playing on that left hand side. So you have Wirtz on the left, Cherki as your number 10, and then Salah on the right. For me, that's a good balance there as well. So you can't really for £19 million, that's nothing. Honestly, we've sold fringe players for a lot more than that, probably double the amount of that anyway. So I really hope we are the club that pursues him. He's actually gone out loud and said that he doesn't want to leave Europe and play in Saudi. Like he said, this is not the time for me to go over there. He said one day he will because he's Muslim and he would like to, play in that league and settle in a Muslim country. But he says right now I need to play in Europe, so don't expect him to go to Saudi or anything like that. Borussia Dortmund was another club that was strongly linked with him, so that could be a destination for Ryan Cherki, but I would love it for it to be Liverpool. So let's see what happens in the future because I know we have strong interest in the player. I know United have been linked with him, but I think if there was a Premier League club that signs Cherki, I think Liverpool would be the front runner. So let's see what happens with the wonder kid Ryan Cherki. Another player that we've been recently linked with, um, not for the first time, is Benjamin Sesko. Now, the Red Bull Leipzig striker has had a decent season, to be fair. He scored 21 goals this season. Um, for me, he's not the striker that I want. From what I've seen, and I've seen him live quite a few times. I don't know if it's bad luck from my side, but whenever I watch him, he has a stink of a game. So I've never been impressed with him in a live capacity. But some fans are telling me, he's the real deal. He's on the verge of becoming a top striker. I don't know. I'm not seeing it right now. I feel like he's quite raw. I know he's only 21 years of age, but he seems quite raw. And for me, I don't really want a project striker anymore. I want us to sign someone that's ready-made, that's going to come into the team, be the number one guy, be our number 9, and score the goals. I don't want it to be where we're trying to mold him into a certain way or, make him develop, when we're playing for major honors right now. So this season coming up, we're going to go for all trophies and we need to have a strong squad. So I don't know. For me, if he was the signing that we make, I wouldn't be dismissive because number one, if Liverpool have signed a player, I will give them my support. But my personal point, it's not a signing that moves me, if I'm being brutally honest. And I think the money involved is not like it's going to be a cheap signing either. I think Red Bull Leipzig won about £100 million. but due to the good relations between Sesko and the club, I think it could be brought down to around 80 million, which for me is still very, very high. So, not for me. He's not top of my list, but he's making a lot of noise. He's been linked with a lot of clubs in the Premier League. Arsenal being one of them, Manchester United in the past as well. So let's see where he ends up. But for me, not the striker I think we should target. Another player from our side is Federico Chiesa. Now, the other day against Brighton, he managed to get a start in the team, playing as our striker or false nine. A damn decent game to be fair, not the most impactful of cameos, but showed glimpses of his talent. So the big question is, what happens with Federico Chiesa? Do we keep him for another season, or is it time to part ways because he hasn't been heavily involved? Now, for me, as much as I rate the player and I really like the player, I think it's probably time for us to part ways with him and for him to maybe return to Italy and play in Serie A. So he's been strongly linked with potential champions in Napoli. So a Napoli move would be, I think, great for him and his career. He'll be playing for an historic club with a passionate fan base. So not a bad club to join. So for me, I feel like the writing's on the wall. Now, in terms of the deal involved, I think they want a loan plus an option to buy, but I think Liverpool want a loan with an obligation to buy. So hopefully, we can get that wrapped up. I don't think the deal, should cost Napoli too much. Even if we sold him for £15 million, we made a bit of a profit there. So let's see what happens with Chiesa. Look, there's nothing to suggest that he might even, stay at the club next season. But I'm going based off what I've seen this season. Arsenal hasn't really included him much. Even when he's been fit, he hasn't been heavily involved in the team or the squad. So for me, the writing's on the wall, and I think Federico Chiesa will be leaving Liverpool this summer. Another player that we've been heavily linked with is Adam Wharton. Now, a player that I do like. I think he's a promising talent, a player with huge potential, but I think he was going to cost an arm and a leg, to be honest with you. And I don't see him being a starter right now. I think McAllister and Gravenberch have formed a great partnership. He would be a player that would probably come in to be more of a rotation player for the two. But I do feel like he would fit in terms of how we want to play, how the profile that we want in that midfielder. Someone who's a deep playmaker who can, you know, set the tempo for us, can even play in between the centre backs, so kind of form a back three and then spray past around the pitch. He's aggressive in the tackle, good read of the game, energetic. So, he ticks all of the boxes in terms of what we want in our next midfielder. But it's going to be interesting for Adam Wharton because Crystal Palace have just won their first trophy in their history, which is the FA Cup. So they'll be playing Europa League next season. Still, despite being very young right now, I think he's 20 years old. You know, he hasn't experienced European football. So if I was him, I think I'd probably stay on for another year, play European football with Crystal Palace, and then next season, maybe weigh his options and see what he wants to do from there onwards. But there has been rumors suggesting that he's a bit homesick and would like to move back to the north, as he was playing for Blackburn previously, so that's where he's based. So let's see. I don't know if we'll end up signing him. I think if we get him, I'll be very pleased, but I just don't think it's a realistic signing for this summer. Quotes are saying that the fee could cost around £60 million, which I think Palace would want a lot more. To be fair, I think they'd want at least £80 million. So let's see. I feel like there could be other options like Angelo Stiller. I feel like similar type of game, but he'd cost probably half of that price. So who knows? Let's see what happens. But I do rate the player, and if he was to sign, I would be very pleased with his addition to the squad. Darwin Núñez. So no surprise there that he's being linked with a move to Saudi. I think Atletico Madrid have also shown some strong interest in the player, which is no surprise. It's teams that we're expected to see registered interest for the player now. In the last few cameos, it's been quite obvious that the player isn't very interested in playing for the club, so it's pretty much the writing's on the wall. I think he knows that he no longer has a future at the club. Some fans are even suggest that we should keep him because if we can't get an Isak on Alvarez, then why bother getting someone else? I'm really not in that boat. For me, we have to replace Darwin Núñez, and I- not to sound silly, I don't even mind who it is, but Darwin Núñez needs to part away from the club because he's hit the ceiling at the club. He's not going to improve any further. We know what we get from him is inconsistency, unfortunately. So therefore, it would be best for both parties for him to move on. We get a good decent amount of money for him for us to reinvest into that new striker, and yeah, both can kind of just go our separate ways and yeah, just continue from there onwards. So if I was to make a prediction, I can see him joining Saudi, to be honest with you. I feel like they showed a lot of interest in the January window. I think they were willing to pay 75 million pounds. And I saw, they did a little interview with him and Diaz on as part of the Liverpool social media stuff. And he was like saying something referring to, he wouldn't mind going to Saudi for the money. So I feel like that would be a move that appeals to him. So I think, that would be a great move for us because we get a good amount of money from him as well. And he'll play with that less pressure and, he'll be set for life as well at the same time. So for me, let's see what happens. I think, we could probably expect to hear some news in the coming weeks regarding to Darwin Núñez. But the big question is who do you replace him because striker market is not, as blessed as it has been over the years. So it's going to be a struggle to find an elite striker to replace him. But I'm sure Liverpool will get it done. Another player that continues to be linked to the club, and that is Rodrigo. Now, the current rumor is that Rodrigo is not pleased with the condition at the club. I know the last game that had the El Clasico, he didn't refuse to play, but he said that he wasn't fully fit to play, so he therefore didn't want to be part of the squad. But I feel like there's always rumors circulating that they're trying to find additions to the squad in order to for Rodrigo to be moved out. And I think one of the names is Nico Williams. That's the player that they want to sign, and of course, he probably occupies the positions that he plays. Rodrigo, I would say his prime position is left wing, but he plays on the right hand side. But I think because of the new coach, which is Xabi Alonso, it might be a different setup for certain players. So at the minute, it's still very unclear, but it looks like Rodrigo could be available in the market now. In terms of the transfer fee, I think he costs at least £80 million. So are Liverpool willing to spend that much on Wirtz and a Rodrigo? I'm not too sure because if you sign those two, for example, how much money do you have to sign for a number 9? Because number 9 for me is the priority position. But one thing I will say though, I feel like Liverpool will make a lot of money from sales. So if we were to sell Diaz and Darwin Núñez, for example, and let's say we got about 70, 75 million each, which is not crazy talk, it is a possibility. Get 150 million pounds on 2 players then. So Works could be, about 90, 100 million pounds, and then you've got 50 million remaining, which you can spend on a Rodrigo, and then whatever money you've made from other, player sales can be added to add to his sort of pot as well. So can't be ruled out, but we'll see. At the minute, I feel like a lot of us little fans are playing accountants, slash FIFA career mode managers because there's so much rumor circulating, so many players being linked to the club, and a lot of them are thinking it's not realistic. But as fans, you have to get excited a little bit because you're now envisioning how these players fit into our team. Now, if Rodrigo was in our team, he'd probably play on the left, and then I see Wirtz playing that number 10 role, which for me seems like the perfect combination. And then you've got Salah on the right, and then hopefully a top striker in the middle. So that would be a formidable 4 players playing together there. So let's see what happens with Rodrigo. But at the minute, it's too much speculation right now. Another player that looks like he could be parting ways, and that is Kelleher. Now, the recent rumor that I've read is that Aston Villa have registered interest in signing the player, and it does make sense because Emiliano Martinez was very emotional in their last home fixture over the weekend, and it looks like he's on the verge of leaving the club. So that means they need to sign a replacement. And if I'm being honest, Kelleher would be a fantastic replacement for Martinez. Kelleher Premier League proven, so No need for, a period of adaptation or anything like that. He's played at European level. He's, a great penalty shot. He's won cups for us as well, in the Carabao Cup, a couple of years ago. So for me, he's a, goalkeeper that should be highly sought after, in my opinion. That's how much I rate him. As Liverpool fans, we say he's the best number two in the world. And we're not just saying that just for the sake of it. We truly believe it. So for me, if he was to sign for Villa, it'd be very interesting because I think if it was any other club, we may have accepted around 30, 35 million pounds. If it's Villa, Villa are trying to finish in the Champions League position, and they can. This weekend will be confirmation in terms of where they finish, but they'll definitely be playing European football of some sort. So for me, I'd want at least 40 million pounds. I'm not even trying to be, greedy here. I feel like that would be a true valuation of the goalkeeper because he's young, he's got plenty of years to develop even further. And I think he's a very, very good keeper. Great shot stopper, but great on the ball with his feet as well. So for me, Davey signing a great replacement for Emiliano Martinez. So yeah, I would say, for Kelleher's sake, I would like him to move on and play for a good club. And I think Aston Villa will fit that bill. So let's see, if that is the club that he ends up joining this summer. Harvey Elliott, now he made a start the other day against Brighton as well, and he's been quite vocal in the last few months in regards to his future, saying that he's a Liverpool fan, like this is his dream club, and he can't see himself playing elsewhere. But he had an interview the other day, and not saying he sounded defeated, but he had a different tone of voice. He was like, I have to look out for myself, like in terms of my career. So we'll see what happens for the future. So for me, that shows that he's been given some sort of discussion, or he's been informed that he's no longer um, part of the plans for next season. And it is a shame because I guess Javier is like he's like one of us in terms of I'm not Scouser, but I'm from London, but he's living the dream as a Liverpool fan, getting to play for Liverpool, your boyhood club. And unfortunately, it's just been, you know, a time for him where he hasn't really pushed to make a mark in the team. I know he's had a few injuries over the years. He had a big injury this season where he was out for 3, 4 months, and that really impacted his involvement in the team. But I feel like, with the way we play, it might not suit his skill set, in terms of I think he's more energy focused, whereas we're a bit more slow and, possession focused. And I think, there's been games where I feel like his physicality, isn't quite up to the standard that we want, in terms of, strength on and off the ball, but in terms of the pressing um, ability as well. So for me, he's a good player. I feel like if he joins another club and as a star, I think he can really flourish. Um, and I think we should be able to get a good amount of money for him as well. At least 40 million pounds. We've got the likes of Wolves and Brighton interested in the player. So it'll be sad to see him part ways with the club. But I do think it's best for him to move on and think about his career because he's very talented. Just because it hasn't worked out at Liverpool doesn't mean it won't work out anywhere else. I do feel like if he joins a club that, plays around his ability and around his skill set, I think he can do really well for another team. So I wish him all the best because I don't think he's done it with any sort of sourness or anything like that. And I think if he does decide to leave, he'll do it with his head held high. So let's see what happens with Harvey. But it does look like he will be leaving the club this summer. Another player that we've been linked with is Hugo Ekitike. Now, the current rumor regarding Ekitike is that he's pretty much informed his club Frankfurt that he wants to leave at the end of the season. He hasn't handed in a transfer request, but he's giving that indication that he would like to pursue a new challenge of some sort. And Liverpool being one of the strong contenders to sign the player, the only stumbling block is the transfer fee. Now, Frankfurt are demanding £100 million to sign the player. I'm not sure if that's euros, actually. If it's euros, then it'll be around 85, similar price to Sesko. But the big question is, if you guys had the choice of signing Sesko and Ekitike, who would it be? I actually did a poll earlier today. Let me see if there's a result for it because it'll show what my followers are thinking in regards to those two players. Um, so interestingly, 58% said Sesko and 42% said Ekitike, which surprised me because for me, I would prefer Ekitike. I feel like Ekitike is the better player right now, and I feel like he has a higher ceiling than Sesko as well, in my opinion. So let's see. The fee is crazy. Even if it was 85 million pounds, in terms of being 100 million euros, it's a lot. So I would say his valuation should be around the 50 million mark. I think that is a fair price. So let's see. Let's see who Liverpool can target because you have players like Gyokeres and Osimhen that are available for 60 million, and they're more accomplished and ready-made for a big team like Liverpool, in my opinion. So I would rather go for that profile of a striker rather than a project striker. But that's just my own way of thinking. But also at the same time, if you were to sign Wirtz, it might be we end up signing a project striker because we might not have the funds to sign an established player, or we might just want a younger profile to join the starting lineup in terms of being the talisman or the lead striker in the team. So we'll soon find out. I think once Kirk looks like he's going to be the second signing. If Wirtz ends up being the first signing, then it would. I feel like, as funny as it sounds, I don't even think the fourth signing would be a striker. I think it would be a defensive midfielder, and then we'd go for the striker. So I think that's the kind of order it looks like in terms of prioritization. But look, as long as we can get all of those positions addressed, I think that's the main thing. So let's see what happens. Another player that's been linked again with the club, and that is Anthony Gordon. No strong sort of reports or rumors from any sort of sources, but the inkling is that Liverpool may, revive their interest in the Newcastle winger this summer with, Diaz's future very unclear, and he could possibly leave the club. Uh, some reports are suggesting that Liverpool will continue their interest in the player and may even place a bid this season. Now, what would I make of this signing? I think he's a decent player. I don't think he's better than Diaz, so he wouldn't be an upgrade in my eyes. Um, I still question his end product. I don't think he's quite accomplished in that area. And this year he's not even been the best winger in Newcastle. The best winger has probably been Jacob Murphy. So he's not had the best of seasons. So for me, it would depend on the price. If we were to sign him for about 50, 60 million pounds, that seems okay. Anything higher than that, I think that's too much. So decent player, but I just don't know if that's the player we should go for. I think there are other players available that will cost a lot less and could have an instant impact in the team as well. Now, one player that has been linked with the club in the last couple of days and has definitely got my attention because I wasn't aware of him until the rumor, and that is Magnus Akluche. Hopefully, I haven't butchered his name there. And he's a very interesting player. Now, if you haven't seen him in action, I would suggest to go and watch a couple compilation videos of him. Of course, it doesn't paint the whole picture, but it gives you an idea of how he plays and how well he's done for his team, which is Monaco this season. And he looks, I'm not gonna lie, he looks like a baller. He's predominantly a right winger, left-footed, glides with the ball, great strength, has a great technique, great shooting ability. He looked like he could be, you know, the next one. And if the rumors are true that we've got interest in the player, then these are the opportunities you can't miss because maybe like 2 years ago, I probably mentioned players like Barcola and Desiree, and I mentioned how good they were in terms of what I saw, and I thought, you know what, if they join a good team, they'll do really well, and they end up joining PSG, and look what's happened there. So I hope he doesn't join PSG because I think he'd be a fantastic addition to their team. Um, and we do need an understudy for Mohamed Salah. I really believe we should sign that player this summer, and he's a young player, this one, so he wouldn't feel that pressure to make an instant impact. He can bide his time, learn from the best, and when he's ready, then he will be in the first team mix um, sooner rather than later. And he's quite versatile. He can play on the left wing. I've seen him play in central positions as well. so would be a good addition to the squad. So for me, I do like him. I do think he's a very talented player. Um, whether it's a priority position for right now, I'm not too sure. Maybe it's a signing we make maybe late in the window if the rumors are true. But definitely a name to remember, because if you don't sign him and he ends up at PSG, yeah, I think we probably missed one there. But we'll see what happens there. That is the final rumor of today. And that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to 86 OVR. Thank you to Ozen Kobak, and thank you to Asa as well. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. In terms of upcoming content, I will be doing the match preview of Liverpool versus Crystal Palace on Saturday. Normally I do on Thursday, but unfortunately I'm not available tomorrow. So Saturday, possibly around this time, like 11 p.m. UK time. But best thing to do is hit that notification bell so you know what time I'll be going live on Saturday. And then on Sunday, we will be doing the live watch along of Liverpool versus Crystal Palace. And of course, enjoy the trophy list at the end of the game. So it should be a special moment. So that is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care, stay safe, and I hope to speak with you all very, very soon.